So there isn't really a hotter topic, I think, in the industry right now than sports betting. As legalization is spreading across the states, we're seeing a lot of excitement. We're seeing a lot of potential revenue. Last I checked, and I'm sure somebody's going to question me on this because it seems to change week to week. I have 13 states have legalized betting, 6 of which it's already launched. So yeah, here's a map that I believe is updated as of last week. And again, it's changing so fast that you never really know anymore. So the idea is that we're going to dive a little bit into how this is going to impact us in the media, broadcast, and production business. And we have 3 people that know just about as much at this early point in time as can be possible. So we're going to go down the line with a few quick intros. Steve, let's start with you. Sportradar has been all over the SVG Summit because you can't do this without data feeds. So just real quick, your piece of the ecosystem and maybe just a few takeaways that you've seen over the last year as this has progressed.
Sure, thank you. And I'd like to say I appreciate the bright lights in my face. So I feel like I'm speaking to a full room. Thank you for having us, Jason. And yes, Sportradar is kind of in a unique position, sitting in between media and betting with the data powering both sides of our business. We support all the production across all the live events on the Sinclair regional networks, Fox, FS1, Big Ten Network, etc. And we provide the data feeds to big media and tech companies, digital companies, tech platforms as well. And then on the betting side, we're the largest in the world at providing the fast data and pre-match and live odds that power the betting in over 400 bookmakers worldwide. And here in the U.S., we're working with all of the bookmakers that have come to the market. We work with FanDuel, DraftKings, the GVC, MGM joint venture, et cetera. And so for us, the last year has been a great opportunity as the thing we're best at in the world came here sooner than we ever thought. And we had spent the previous 4 years or so establishing ourselves in North America because we're a European-based company and have done partnerships with the 4 major pro sports leagues in order to be their official partner when it comes to the data for media and for betting, which is important in this market, and I'm sure we'll touch on why. And also we do stream all NFL, NBA, and MLB games that you guys produce into the betting market outside the U.S. And that's an interesting development that we'll get into as well.
Yeah, sure. And it has been interesting to learn as I've kind of dove into this, that difference between media feeds and sportsbook feeds. There's a whole different
There's a very
model.
different
requirement
from the 2 data feeds.
And we'll dig in just a sec. But Mike, I want to go to you. ESPN has dipped its toe. Would you say toe, foot? What do you think in the water when it comes to sports betting?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been covering betting for 10 years from an editorial standpoint and also from an industry standpoint, and it's always been part of the sports story. I think with the change in the law and the regulations happening on a state-by-state basis, I think we're leaning in a lot more. I mean, I think it is now much more significant as a part of whether it's SportsCenter in terms of talking about lines or odds in a particular event or dedicated programming. So, we recently launched a show called Daily Wager, which focuses exclusively around sports betting, and it's doing really well. Just launched a few months ago. So I think for us, this is, a big part of the sports story, from a news and information standpoint. We would be leaning in a lot already, and I think that it's something we're going to see a lot more growth from in the next couple of years.
So for those who haven't seen Daily Wager, we have a clip here just to give you an idea of the strategy that you guys are going after. And I mean, from what I've watched, it is very information. Some are taking some more personality centric, but you guys are it's very much a news informative feed there.
Sure. I mean, I think from an ESPN standpoint, we approach things a variety of different ways. I think we're able to provide an incredibly authentic, leading, cutting edge show that's targeting someone who's into sports betting and wants advice and tips and insights, and Daily Wager, works exceptionally well for that particular audience. So here's a quick clip of the show.
Let's take a look.
right off the bat, we have some recent news. Derrick Henry will play today.
Remember the Titans. He is the straw that stirs this drink.
Play action pass game.
It's going to be a cold one today at Lambeau.
That's something Aaron Rodgers is not going to want to see.
We've seen some line movement throughout the week.
Low total. I like the Bears plus the points. I'm taking over 45.5. Giants Dolphins. You don't know what they're doing. They're just in a downward spiral. I got to take the Raiders.
Harry's a guy to look out for going forward.
Several defensive issues for the Cowboys all season.
The model says go with the Cowboys. I'm going to ride. That's an official play for me on the Cowboys.
The U.S. did, in fact, rally for the win. We do have a roster alert. LeBron has yet to miss a game.
I like the under if LeBron's out.
Huge majority of the tickets on the Vikings. We go quad box for the nightcap.
This game will go down to the wire. I think Buffalo pulls it out.
They have 20 turnovers at home.
We'll take the over 49. Recapping our best bets. Remember, we had a couple banked throughout the week.
And so what you're seeing there is the Sunday version of the show. So we recently added it on Sunday on ESPN2. Obviously, which works exceptionally well with the NFL games, and it's Monday through Friday, in the early evening on 6 o'clock. Also moved over to ESPN2 recently.
Yeah, it's a perfect sweet spot, no question. So Damon, again, a bit of an ESPN reunited here. Your previous life was at ESPN, but NBC Sports Washington took, I would say, probably the biggest leap with your predictive gaming telecast a while ago, and now have continued to explore this with Wizards games and now some Washington football games during the preseason. So tell us a little bit about what went into, why did you guys decide to jump into predictive gaming, and how do you see sports betting impacting your actual production and your actual broadcast?
Yeah, so last year, we sought out to figure out ways to increase engagement with fans watching our games. We're the official TV network of the Wizards, the Capitals, and also the Redskins. And when the Supreme Court ruling happened, we knew that we needed to be in this space. In particular, we knew that in our region, which is Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland, that those could be areas that would adopt sports betting faster. So engagement really drove a lot of this. And then the other part we had a perfect storm in DC because Monumental Sports Entertainment, which is the owner of the Wizards and Caps, Ted Leonsis and Zach Leonsis, one of the most innovative sports ownership groups out there. They are big into innovation and they take big swings. So we pitched the idea to make our broadcasts more interactive. And gambling was a way to do this. Sports is the perfect vehicle for fans to interact in real time with a broadcast. And what we saw with sports gambling was people would stay longer if they were vested in the game. We work with a number of vendors and partners, I should say, with Chiron. We also work with iPowwow, and we wanted to figure out a way to increase engagement. So what we did was we started to educate the public about prop bets. And this is a way to really the on-ramp to sports betting in our area in Washington, D.C. So we wanted to get the public ready. And it was really about casual fans. We weren't after the sharks or the whales. We want people that want to have a good time, eventually will spend $10, $20 on betting, but this is a way for us to prime the pump and get fans ready for sports betting. So we launched this game, and we have two channels in Washington. We have a main channel, and we have a plus channel. We use the plus channel when we have conflicts with Caps and Wizards games. So what we did with the plus channel is we actually created an alternate gambling feed during Wizards games last year. So fans who wanted to watch the regular broadcast were able to watch it with our regular announcers, and then with our secondary channel, our plus channel, we were able to give a sports betting feed that was tailored to sports fans. So we have a clip we can show you guys right now.
Yeah, let's just take a look.
$500 a quarter. Every quarter, brand new game. So, I can lose to Nick Ashley in one game, but I can beat him 3 more times every different quarter. So you see this here. Head over to NBCSportsWashington.com/predict. Every quarter is a new game. Like I said, $500 a quarter. Make sure to answer those questions because you even get 1 point for just answering the question. Yes, that's West Hall's favorite thing.
Hey,
You don't even
we'll
have to
get
get
you
it
through
right.
standardized
Just
testing.
answer that question.
Looking at the D-line that you have in front of you, a great D-line, a lot of expectations, but you all come in and you make this linebacker position along with your DBs. Everything looks good defensively.
But the Wizards look like they were going to fall behind really
We have
quickly.
some fun here in the fourth quarter, which is exciting. Sometimes we stand here and we're like, there's no shot. This is some fun. $500 still on the line, so keep it coming.
Here's a question for you. Will this be the highest scoring quarter for Bradley Beal? He's already got 20. I'm going to need him. Well, they're already winning right now. As long as he gives me 5, I'm happy for it. So, the question, though, you got to answer it yes, no, or tie.
Defensive coordinator watching anxiously. On 3rd and goal, Turner is forced back. Wrapped up by JoJo Wicker.
Justin and Karan, the next question that's coming up, will any player outscore Bradley Beal in the first quarter? Right now, he's got 4. Joel Embiid has 7, but he's not out on the floor.
That's a good question. I will let Karan go first.
I don't think so, because Joel Embiid is not going to insert himself back in the game until the second quarter. And the only possible guy that can do that is Ben Simmons, whether he's driving to the basket or getting into the paint and making something happen.
So give me a little bit of insight into the cadence that you guys decided to go with in terms of how many questions, and obviously it's going to differ between a Redskins game and a Wizards game, but how often, what were some of the stylistically questions you were going after? Because the whole idea is engagement, so how much is too much, I guess?
One of the, I think, advantages that we have at the regional sports network level is the fact that we get a lot of reps. There are 82 Wizards games. We had 4 Redskins preseason games. And we're also looking potentially doing something with the Washington Capitals. So we wanted to experiment early and figure out what would keep fans the longest. And we learned over time that we needed to ask more questions or present more prop bets during the quarters. And we also changed the format of the game. When we first started out, we were giving fans $1,000 if they answered, if they were the points leader during the predictive game. And over time, we made those into shorter games. So each quarter there was a winner. And what we found is that fans want instant gratification. And again, the fact that we're able to get a lot of reps with these games, we're able to learn fast and also iterate in real time.
Right, and essentially this is the on-ramp, right? That's how you guys view this. You view this is going to get people comfortable, and then once legislation comes, once culture comes along, then sports betting is the next logical step, right?
Yeah, this is about education. The general public doesn't necessarily know about prop bets and what they are. We think this is a way for us to get people introduced to what this is. And again, it should be fun. It should be engaging. And that's what's driving us. Engagement is what's driving what we do from a integration standpoint.
Cool. So I'm curious, since we have Mike and Damon up, how do you guys think your strategies are going to differ as this whole ecosystem evolves over the next few years from a regional versus a national perspective? I mean, obviously Sinclair is making a huge bet on terms of RSNs being a big deal for betting, and vice versa. And there's national networks out there as well that are really making a bid. So I'm curious strategically, and I'll start with you, Mike. But what constraints do you have, since it's still a state-by-state type thing, and how do you kind of see that playing out as more states legalize?
So from a news and information standpoint, it's already national, right? So we're, from a national network, from digital platform standpoint, we're talking about it across all the platforms, and it's very much, contextually important, to a lot of the audience, certainly to the avid fans. It's highly interesting. So we're working, across all of our platforms nationally from that standpoint. I think the regional aspect has more to do with advertising. So,
Sure.
The ability to take advertising is going to be limited more to the local markets or on a regional basis or on a geo-targeted basis via digital. And so we'll really have to wait till you get a significant percentage of the country available to legally bet before you see an impact on national advertising.
Damon, obviously, especially in your market, but as you talk to your cohorts at NBC Sports Regionals, I'm sure there's a lot of strategy going in, and you guys see a pretty prime spot for RSNs here.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. It's complicated because this is a state-by-state situation, and we operate in an area. Our region is Delaware, it's West Virginia, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. So we're in the epicenter where legalized sports betting is in a couple of those pockets, and we look at this as an opportunity because we have people in the market. We have a local sales team. We're out there able to talk to advertisers in our area. So regionally, we think this could be a robust business from an ad sales standpoint.
Steve, look, we can't have this discussion if we don't talk about latency, right? I mean, everything is about immediacy when it comes to betting, especially when you're talking about a video feed as well as, a live betting feed. So how do you guys manage that? What have you guys learned globally outside of the U.S., and how is that managed elsewhere? Because if Damon, even a predictive gaming thing, if the latency isn't there on the app to say, are they going to convert on third down for a Redskins preseason game, that's an issue, right? So how do you guys deal with that in other markets?
We spend a lot of money dealing with it. It's critical, and there's two sides of it. The data, that's the reason we have invested in these official partnerships with, the NBA, MLB, NFL, and NHL, is in-play betting globally is more than half the market. I think it's approaching a third of the market here already. It's not the traditional Vegas way of betting where you go to the casino, to the sports book, and line up at the window before the game or at halftime. But when it's mobile and it's available, people like to continue to bet. You talked about engagement and more opportunities in your predictive game. That's the same reason people want to bet in play. So we work with the leagues to have the fastest access to the venue or the data feeds that come out of there to be able to deliver that to the bookmakers to power live odds, which is our biggest product, so that as the game is happening, you can constantly bet on the outcome and the update of the game. On the video side, the U.S. is the slowest in the world as far as, we have the Janet Jackson rule, all that sort of stuff, right? To get the video actually in front of the consumer, and whether it's satellite or cable, over the air, they're all different. With the video that we take, that we supply to the betting industry when we're streaming all these games, it's very critical that we are delivering within 3 to 5 seconds of what happens on the court, that we're streaming it to Bet365 in Europe somewhere so that people can watch it. So that's why all the investments that the leagues have made on their video infrastructure, we're kind of bypassing any of the broadcast sort of delays and getting that directly, from Secaucus, from Steve on the NBA and et cetera across the leagues. And it has to be within that time frame, or it's of zero value in the betting industry.
So you're there, at least with the 4 main leagues?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in a good spot. Yep. And again, the challenge is, we talked about the betting feed and the media feeds being different. We get, a very in-depth play-by-play feed that the leagues have invested millions of dollars in creating their play-by-play feeds that are, capture all the details. And the betting feed doesn't need all that detail. It needs very fast and a thin layer of data, but it also includes other things like bet stops, where you have to close the window on what would be the equivalent of your predictive game of the answer to that question can't be known before you stop allowing people to bet on it. You have to you can't allow sure bets. So there's a lot but you want to have the window open as much as possible, because that's where the volume of the betting comes from. So you want very short closed windows, but you have to get them closed in time. So I mean, it's really threading the needle, and there's a lot of infrastructure on our side and cooperation with the leagues that allows us to do that.
Sure. I mentioned it to Steve, but guys, I'm curious. Do you look at Europe, and do you look at Asia, and do you look at global markets and how they cover and how they handle sports betting, and say, maybe we can learn something, or maybe a U.S. fan is different than that? Damon, I'll start with you, since they, obviously in-game betting is covered within their telecasts a lot more. You see a lot more graphics and stuff like that. Did you guys look at that when you were launching?
We did. David Preschlack, who heads up NBC Sports Regional Networks, pointed to what Sky Sports is doing in Europe. And as you know, Comcast acquired Sky recently. So we took best practices from what Sky is doing, and it was about the casual fans' engagement. That's what we learned, and that's what we tried to apply to what we're doing here in Washington, D.C.
Cool. Mike, do you take that into consideration, or do your programming and production guys take it into consideration?
Sure. So, we have operations all around the world in different markets, and some are mature legal betting markets like the UK and Australia, and we've had, both, networks and digital properties in place in those markets for years. So I think they're all different levels, right? I think in the UK, it's a fairly mature market. It's pretty much an advertising-driven business. I think there's been some changes, based on some pullbacks recently, but generally speaking, in a market like the UK, everyone who's interested in sports betting has access to it. It's a highly competitive market. I think in Australia, a very similar way. So I think for us, having some understanding, experience with certainly in digital internationally is highly beneficial here, and may guide some of the thinking in the U.S. I also think the U.S. is different because you have a more significantly led casino industry and strong position from the gaming companies, and I think that will dictate a lot more, already is dictating a lot more in the U.S. market than perhaps you've seen in the UK or Australia.
Sure. Steve?
One of the things, I think Damon's right in that if you're putting programming together, content, particularly on your game broadcasts, you don't really need to target the hardcore, avid sports gambler. He's already there. He's already watching. He's already engaged. And that's a small group. But the casual fan that may become more engaged and more interested in your game, that's where the opportunity is. And that's what we're spending our time on developing our content for our media partners, is with our advanced insights and market insights and things, is to make betting a little more accessible, a little more understandable, a little more interesting, because that's where the huge opportunity is of the 90% of the people that didn't already have a bookie or an account through a VPN overseas.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, cool. Damon and Mike, I'll throw it right back on you because, Damon, you brought it up. You said this is all about education. We're in those early stages. And when I watch Daily Wager, Mike, I see that it's very much sort of like, okay, I'm starting to understand this. It's the basics type thing. You see a lot of personalities that are mainstream ESPN personalities on there. So both of you guys, how do you find that middle point where you're saying, okay, we need to educate to the point where the casual fan understands what's going on, but we don't want to alienate a hardcore bettor that might already be excited and be ready to be engaged?
I mean, I think you've had to find the right lanes, right? I think if there's a super serious bettor who's looking for the best tools, the best insights, they're going to be able to find that on ESPN. If you have a casual fan that, from a standpoint of just knowledge of a point spread, or, wants to know who's favored in a particular, game or match, they're going to have access to that. So I think you have to, structure things in a way that it's available to the different segments of the fan base in whatever format they want. And also, if someone's not interested in it, then you're not pushing it too much, right? I think you have to find that right cadence where, we certainly have a number of programs where it's available in lots of different ways, and I think that's really important. And I think it's still evolving. I mean, I think there's certainly, some indication that younger fans, the often-mentioned millennials have, a higher degree of interest here. We'll see. I think this is the U.S. is a very new market in this space, and it's emerging at a point where technology is much further advanced than some of the more mature markets were at the time when it was launched. I think mobile is key. So I think the U.S. is probably going to drive things in a slightly different way, and I think we're still learning and figuring that out.
Sure. Damon, thoughts?
Authenticity is extremely important, and real gamblers can see through it if you're faking it. So we have to balance that. We have a show that we produce called The Daily Line. It's a radio show that's on NBC Sports from 3 to 7. This is not a plug. I'm giving an example, but it's on from 3 to 7, and we do a TV simulcast on the regional sports networks. We produce that show out of our studio in Bethesda, Maryland, and I think that's a interesting blend of trying to talk to gamblers and then trying to talk to the casual fan, and it's a balance, and it's something that you have to figure out.
Cool, Mike. I want to bring this up before we go to our next topic because we are SVG. A lot of stuff is about technology, broadcast infrastructure, that type of thing. You guys have made a pretty big leap that's coming up here in terms of building a studio in Vegas in the Link, and I'm curious. What can we expect there? We're all pretty excited to see what kind of programming is going to come out there, what it's going to look like, that type of thing. We've seen Bleacher Report also launch, and I'm sure that you guys won't be the last. Why do you see an advantage in terms of launching a facility out there, and what can we expect?
So when we were first talking to Caesars about a partnership, I think one of the things, to their credit, they expressed was, have you thought about putting a studio in Vegas? And, I think at the time we weren't really thinking about that. But it really made sense as we began to look at the evolution of Vegas as a sports town. Certainly authentic to be there. There are, major events, we can cover from a different angle. The team, by the way, I got to shout out to Kevin Gauthier, who's part of Chris Calcineri's team, who's here in the audience today, and they're doing a phenomenal job working with the Caesars group on the construction, the studio that should be ready to go by, late March or early April. So, super excited about that. But I think it gives us a great, newest studio from an ESPN perspective, something we'll be able to use a great deal, something that will, become more meaningful in time as well as the Las Vegas market evolves. So I think for us, it wasn't, an initial intent, but we kind of got there, and we're super excited to have that, that placement in Vegas, that studio that we can operate out of.
Yeah, we're excited to see it. Should be fun. So we're entering the crystal ball sector of this panel here, and I think when you think about sports betting and you think about how it's going to end up aligning with technology, interactive television, interactive OTT service, just interactivity and personalization is something that's really going to jump out at you. So I'm curious if anybody wants to, you don't have to make a prediction, but with ATSC 3.0 potentially coming down the line, and Steve, the way that you're now interacting directly with media companies, do you think we're going to get more of an interactive type experience rather than a lean back type experience as a result of the growth of betting?
Yes, 100%. I think the best bookmakers will have the best experience and interface on their mobile apps to begin with, and I think that's why in this market you've seen FanDuel and DraftKings bring the learnings of what they did in daily fantasy to really have the kind of the best sportsbook experience out of the gate on the mobile device. And I don't know what all those letters and symbols
Sorry,
mean,
that's
but,
SVG speak, I guess, yeah.
In a sense, we're already doing that to a great degree outside the U.S., where we stream 45,000 events a year live for bookmakers, and it's not just the broadcast that's produced for normal consumption. It has information around it, bet stimulation information, the ability to place a bet, right as you're watching it, and that interactivity is going to be the future. And as far I do think that, and we've started in the U.S. as well, where FanDuel has taken some Bundesliga from us and some tennis, and they're streaming that in New Jersey, so fans can watch something and place a bet on it while they're doing that. And those, at this point early in the market, those were the rights we had cleared for U.S. that we were able to do that. But it's a great marketing tool for the bookmakers, and I think you will see that grow. I think you will see it with local content, U.S. sports. I don't think you'll see all the games being streamed that way because of all the other rights deals and whatnot, but out of market, on a limited basis, that's my prediction, is that you'll see, and I think that's going to be a huge game changer as far as the engagement with the bookmakers go.
And that's going to change everybody's job in terms of production, right? I mean, we're talking about new versions. I mean, you guys with the MegaCast are all about versioning and stuff. I'm sure that there's going to be a day where we have a betting version at some point. Not telling you to say that, Mike, but I'm sure that that's coming down the line. Do you guys believe that has to be part of this? I mean, obviously there's the linear experience, but There has to be something, especially with the oft-talked about millennials, that says, okay, I'm going to stay engaged and I'm going to watch more of this game as a result of that interactivity.
I mean, listen, I think we're already very much there in terms of second, third screen experiences today. I mean, we're watching sporting events while we're on our mobile phones, looking at scores from other games. Last night I'm watching Monday Night Football. I'm watching the live, feed from this, the Rise of Skywalker blue carpet premiere on Twitter. It's not a corporate pitch. But, and I said to my wife, it's not bad for a boomer, right, to be able to do this. So I think that we're in an environment where we're multitasking, we're looking at different things simultaneously. That's very much part of the cadence of sports betting, and I don't think it's anything new. But I think you'll see innovation emerge, in that environment that we already are living in.
Damon, you guys already have the app that interacts with the predictive gaming telecast, obviously. How do you kind of see that progressing? Do you see opportunities for maybe what is going to come next in terms of interactive elements?
Being available on every device, every screen is a core strategy for any media company today. In terms of where we take this, we want to expand this to other sports. So eventually, we want to experiment with NHL at some point, and it's about taking swings. When we developed this game, it started off small and it started getting incrementally bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's one of the challenge with this is that there's so many ways you can go from a product development standpoint, and it's complex because with legislation state by state, it makes it even tougher. Where I see the future going here is that I think that there'll be more integration onto television screens. There'll be more interactivity mobile. I think the two talking to each other is going to be important as well. To me, it has to be an experience that's in sync across all devices and all platforms.
Sure, cool. Any questions out there? I got two more brief questions for these guys, but if there are any early morning queries, let me know. We'll bring a mic to you. So we're going to close out with these two guys. One question looking back, one question looking forward. Damon, I'll start with you. Since you guys did your very first predictive gaming telecast, what is the biggest thing that you have learned or the biggest surprise that has hit you that maybe you didn't expect? And that can be a production element, it can be a response from the audience, it can be a mentality. What's like the one thing that really jumped out at you that you didn't expect?
Let's see. This is a full-scale production. It requires a separate production team to actually do these games. We've light up a second control room, bring in people, producers, PAs, talent. So it's a separate production. I think it was more than I thought it would be. We've been able to fine-tune over time, but it requires a lot of resources to get these things done.
Mike, what about you? Since Daily Wager launched, since some of the other efforts that you guys have really ramped up, what's the thing that really caught you by surprise?
I think it's interesting. I think things have moved both very quickly and very slowly, right? I think from a standpoint of if you look at PASPA repeal, back in April, May of 2018, we're just a year and a half away from that. And if you look at what's happened in that period of time, it's moved at light speed. At the same time, because we're in a U.S. structure where there's state-by-state regulation, I think that part of it probably for some has moved a little bit more slowly than expected. And you don't have mobile betting in states that are legal. You still have states that have to come online. So I think some of us expected that to move a little bit more quickly. So I think it's interesting how a lot of activity, a lot of news, a lot of announcements very, very early. Really it hasn't stopped, and at the same time, we're still waiting for a full national rollout.
Yeah, outside of a few states with mobile betting, I mean, it feels the same in a lot of ways. But Steve, obviously, everything has amped up so quickly over the last couple of years for you guys because the industry has accelerated. What's the big surprise for you?
Well, I think looking back, it has been slow, painful, and political, and that's not a great recipe. And state legislatures, they don't understand this stuff. A lot of those are part-time roles and everything, and it's just going to be a slog to get through. And we need California, Texas, Florida, big states to go, and I think you'll see things really start to accelerate at that point.
Okay, so you may have stole the final question, which is now looking forward. So 12 months from now, you can do 24 months if you want. That's what surprised you most over the last couple of years. What do you think, what's going to surprise everybody out here? Or what's one prediction that you can say is definitely, you think, going to happen when it comes to the sports betting ecosystem in the next 12 to 24 months? Damon had to have last licks on the last one, so go. Oh, Mike, you jumped at it, so Steve can have a little more time.
Listen, I think New York is really crucial in terms of, we haven't yet seen in New York City having mobile betting, and you're looking at a few locations in New York State where you can go and bet a local sports book. So I think it'll be fascinating to see what happens from New York, which is certainly a huge reference point for the country from a media industry sports standpoint. So I think there's nothing like that really anywhere around the world in terms of seeing what happens when you have reasonable proliferation of betting apps and people on mobile phones betting within New York.
Damon or Steve, who wants second? Go for it.
This isn't groundbreaking, but we're going to see more sports books at arenas and at venues, and the ability to bet inside at the games is going to be interesting to see that roll out.
I think it's just going to be that we're going to get further away from betting being a dirty word, and it's just going to become more kind of accepted as part of this industry and kind of American culture, because people were already doing it, and we're just kind of bringing it out and making it a little bit easier. So you'll see streaming of games, you'll see the in the venues, and over time you'll see the leagues react in ways to try to make sure that they're maximizing the exposure for their games by spreading things out and not overlapping games and things like that.
Cool. Mike has New York, hopefully. Damon has more betting in venues. And Steve, we're going to see the culture embrace it fully on the mainstream. Gentlemen, thank you guys so much for waking up early. Really appreciate it.